Yep. Good morning, everyone. So, yesterday we started discussing about class components in React.js. Class components related basics we learned. In class component, we discussed about pure component and React component base. Pure and React component are two base classes for creating component. Another, we learnt about how component render method we learnt, which is going to return the JSX elements, and we discussed about state in class component. State, how do we configure? And for that we have this dot state, which is an object type, and this dot set state is to configure values into the state. And we learnt about component did mount. Did mount is a method. Component did mount is to define actions at the time of mounting. So we learnt about component did mount. Did mount is nothing but it is going to define actions to perform at the time of mounting. The same thing we done while working with function components by using use effect. So here we cannot use effect, so we are using component did mount method. Next, after understanding how to design component using class, one new thing here is we need to know about events in a class component. Today we will see what is change in this events in class component. So as I told you, style binding, class binding, and event data binding. These are same as you learnt in your functions. Style binding, class binding, and data binding are same. How you bind the data, how you bind the classes, how do you bind the styles, everything is same. So how class binding works, style binding works. Style binding defines by using style. It uses an object with a key as well value. How the class binding works, it uses a class name and you can put some dynamic class into that. Okay. Data binding, already we know how we can bind the data. Data binding is defined by using binding expression. So there is no change in style binding, class binding, and data binding. But we have change in event binding. Some changes are there in event binding. Generally in function components, how do we write events? Events, already I explained event related mechanism. Event uses delegate mechanism. Event uses observer pattern, subscriber, sender. These terms I already explained to you. Actually in function component, event points towards a function. Here event points towards a method. So here how the events are defined, same. Actually uh, events are subscribed. Events are subscribed to methods in class. events are subscribed to methods in class. All synthetic events are same as you have used in function components. All synthetic events are same. That means event arguments, everything is same. What are synthetic events? What are synthetic events? We discussed about synthetic event. What are synthetic events? Synthetic events are the base for events in React. In React, all events are derived from a base class. What is that base class? Synthetic events. Synthetic events is the base. Actual DOM events are browser events, and virtual DOM events are synthetic events. So synthetic events is a base class for all events in React.js. All virtual DOM events are known as synthetic events. They are derived from which base class? Synthetic events base class. So synthetic event is the base, and all synthetic events I showed you on mouse over, on mouse up, everything are same. Mouse keyboard events are same. Here they are subscribed to methods. They are not subscribed to functions. They are subscribed to methods. That means actually how you write. Suppose in a class we have a login. This extends React component, and rest of other concepts are same. I will not give everything here. Just we have a method handle login click. Now our element should point towards this because we have a render method. This render method will return. It is going to return a div. In that we have a button on click. How to access a method inside the class? This dot handle login click. That's what you need to do. So this is the technique of defining event. That's how we configure the events. Actually, in our function components, this handle login click is a function. But here they are defined as what? Methods. Here we cannot have function as class member. So how to access the methods inside the class? Inside the class, any member is accessible by using this. So this, and you have to point towards. Now here, some important points are there. Some important questions also asked in interviews related to this concept. So what is that? Let's see. So let's open our application and so in this application, so we are starting this application, npm start. Now in this admin login, suppose we are writing, let's remove this, and we don't need any mount also here. Okay, we are just adding the button. So here we are defining events, and we have a button login. Now on login click, I want some functionality to execute. I want some action to perform. Generally in class components, how do we write that? Yeah. So here on login click, I want some action to perform. Then how do we write events in a class component? We create one method. So you cannot write a function because class will not allow functions as class member. So we have to write a simple method handle login click. And login click, we need to execute some functionality. Some I will keep alert or console.log login success. Some message we are giving. I will just keep this as alert. Some alert login success. And I want to know the button related ID. Button have an ID btn login. Button have a name login button. So I want to access the button details also. How you access? Through event arguments. Event argument reference is what? E. I will use that console log, and through E I want ID. Button ID is E dot target dot what? ID. In the next line I want name. So E dot target dot name. We are accessing the button related details. Suppose I want X position. X position, how we can get? E dot what? Client X. Like this we are accessing the details. Okay. Now let's run this and see. Inspect in the console, and when I click on this login button, an alert will come. So, and that alert message should display. For finding that with the login button, we have to write what? On click this dot handle login click. Because methods inside the class are accessible by using this keyword. We can access using this. Okay. Now I will save this and I click on login. Alert will come login success, and it is going to display the details. Event arguments are same. There is no difference in event arguments. Only the difference what you see here is first difference. We write methods and we point towards the methods. So all event arguments are same. So we write a method and we point towards the method. On change, on blur, key events, all events are similar. But here one problem is that. So here let me define event arguments. Event arguments are defined using event parameter. Event parameter. So which provides access to element and event details. Actually that is same. handle login click will have E. So E dot client X, E dot target dot ID, E dot target dot name. All these things we can access like that. So they are same. There is no change in this. So how you collect the event arguments in a function? The same way you collect event arguments in a method also, same. But one problem is that, what is the problem is, as of now, to display the actions and define the actions, that means to display exposition, to display ID, to display name, what this method is doing is, method is using a simple document methods. That means what login click is doing, this login click is using alert and console. And you know that alert and console are belonging to, alert and console belong to DOM objects. They belong to DOM. If you designed an event and that event method is using some DOM methods, no problem. But if event method is using a state, then problem will come. This problem you will not face in functions, but you will face this in a class. You see now, what we want to do is, let me copy this first as your first example here. I will copy this admin login dot what JSX. This is simple. You don't have any problem because the methods are using DOM, the events are using DOM actions. It is using the DOM actions. Now, what is the problem is, see, I am not using any DOM actions. I will put here a state, this dot state. In the state, I will keep an object with a key called MSG. MSG is message. Some MSG message is empty string. I want to display this message below this button. Below the button, I keep some paragraph. Here I want to display message. This dot what? MSG. We can display the message. That means default, the message contains some information like click login. I will just keep a message. That means you see we have a message like click login. And that login should display here. That means this dot state dot what? MSG. It is going to display the message here. Click login is there. Now what I should do is, when user clicks the login, I want to change the message. How? On login click, I want to change the message. How to change the message? On login click, what we have to do? We have to set a new message into state. That means how do we do? This dot what? Set state. What is the key? It's an object. In that we have a key what? Message. What is the value into the message? Message value is login success. Some message we are giving into this. Some message we are defined. That means when user clicks on login, so what the login is doing is, it is displaying some message. It is displaying the message. Okay. We are initializing the message and later we are updating the message on login click. So you see now when I run this, I click on login, then it will fail. So it is failing in setting the message. Actually, if I am not using a state, I am using any DOM method like alert and I say login success, then there is no problem. You see, I click, there is no problem. But when I try to use state, on any event, try to use state on any event. So you see, when I am trying to use the state, it shows an error. So this is one major point you need to understand. So the question here is why the set state is failed. What is the reason why set state is failed? The reason is very simple. Actually, when state is created, at the time of creating component, because you written in constructor, constructor indicates that what is the role of constructor? It defines actions to perform while creating an object for your class. What is the role of constructor? The constructor is used for instantiation. That means it is used for creating an object for class. While creating object, if you want any action that you can define inside the constructor. So state is created while you are creating an object for that particular component. Okay. After the state is created, after the component is created, next what happens is the component will register this login. I will explain a life cycle in the next session. We will see life cycle. After this, we will discuss about life cycle. So first, the component object is created. After that, the methods are registered. That means when this method is registered after the state is created. When a method is registered after the state created, this method cannot use the state. That method cannot use the state. If a method have to use the state, it must be registered at the same time when the state is being created. That means when state is created, at the same time this method also should be registered. If state and method are registered at same time, then only the state allows to use that method. That means method is allowed to use that state only when it is registered at the time of registering the state. So if you don't do that, then it will not allow to use the state. It will not allow to use the state. So you will not face any problem if your event is not using state. If your event is using simple DOM methods, then there is no issue. If the event is using state, then the problem comes. So what is the issue in class component? This problem is not there in function components. In class components, at the time of creating a constructor, means at the time of creating an object for class, the state is registered. At the same time, the methods also should be registered. Otherwise, it cannot work. These methods cannot use the state. So what we have to do is, that is the key point. It is just like, I will tell you one simple example, like, you install some new software on your PC. You install some new software on your device. After installing, that software is not ready to use. Installation successfully completed, then the software asks to restart computer. Why? Why you need to restart computer after installing a software? You know this point? You install some new software. After installing a software, it will ask to restart your computer. Why? I hope everyone experienced that. Now the question is why? Why it asks to restart? Because actually what happens is your operating system have a registry. Your operating system has a registry. This registry contains information about all softwares. Whatever softwares are installed, it contains information about those softwares. Remember, if any software is not in the registry, that software will not work. Any software is not in the registry, that software will not work. Now what you have done is you installed a new software. You installed a new software. Generally, this registry will register all softwares at the time of booting. At the time of booting means at the time of loading your PC. At the time of loading your PC, the registry will register all the softwares, and once it register all the softwares, you can use those softwares. And now what happened is, after the registry completed, you installed a new software. Now, when you install this new software, it is not in the registry. If it is not in the registry, you cannot use it. Now, what to do? The new software that you installed, it cannot go into registry. If it goes into registry, then you can start using it. It will not go into registry. Then what we have to do? We have to restart our operating system. When we restart our operating system, what it will do? Again, when it is restarting, the new software that you installed, it will register that into the registry. Once the new software is registered into the registry, now you can start using it. That means after you loaded operating system and you installed some software, that software is not into the registry. If it is not into registry, you cannot use it. So what to do? Restart. When you restart the computer, what will happen? Again, the registry will load. At the time of loading registry, it will find new softwares that you have installed and it will register them. That means you can start using the new software that you have installed. Actually, in your computer, you can open run, you can type REGED edit. You can type registry editor, REG edit. When you type REG edit, it opens a registry editor. This is registry editor. When I say yes, it opens the registry editor. This is the location where all the softwares are registered. Remember, whenever your software license expires, it will show a message saying that license expired and all. All the keys, licenses, everything is maintained here. Now, what some people do is they hack the registry and they make the changes into the registry and they make the software available forever. That is not possible every time. It depends because everything is not allowed to modify in registry. That means many softwares can be modified through registry. But that is very risky and that is generally done by people who are in hardware networking and people who are in hacking. So usually why I explained this concept, because the concept is same here. When a state is created, the state is created at the time of creating component object. After the state is created, a method is registered. That method cannot use the state. Make sure that that method is also registered at the time of registering the state. Then what to do is go to constructor. You observe carefully now here, when I click login, it is not working because it is not registered at the time of registering state. You have to do one thing here. Which method? This dot what? Handle login click. That is the method name. What we have to do? We have to register this method with the current class object. That means we have to use this dot handle login click. We have a method called bind. Bind with this. This refers to current class memory. This refers to the current class memory. That means what it will do? It will bind this method to the current class memory. Current class memory is allocated by constructor. And what will happen? In this memory, state is registered. At the time of registering the state, this method is also registered. Then what will happen? This method can use the state now. Otherwise, it cannot use the state. Otherwise, it cannot use the state. Now you see the concept. Once I registered the method, now I will run this login click. It is working fine. If you miss this, it is not going to work. This is very mandatory, and this is very big headache for us in class. Suppose now imagine you are designing a form in that 10 elements are there, on change, on change, on change. All 10 elements data you are collecting and storing in a state. Then all those 10 events must be registered in constructor. You are writing 10 events, all the 10 events are using a state, all those 10 events must be registered inside the construct. And remember, that is required only when they are trying to use the state. If they are not trying to use the state, you don't need. For example, you see, suppose I am writing another button, and this button have a cancel sum. And what we will do? So we have a handle cancel click. This cancel click is not using a state. It is not using a state. It is using a simple alert or console or document write, like some DOM methods it is using. Cancelled, that is the message. Now here button on click. We have button on click. On click. This dot handle cancel click. Now you see what happens here is, when I click cancel click, it is working fine. And why? Because I am not registering cancel click. Even I am not registering cancel click, it is working because it is not using state. If cancel click tries to use the state, then automatically issue will come. Then what we have to do? We have to register cancel click also here. That means now cancel click, I want to use the state. What is it? This dot what? Set state, MSG. What is the message? Cancelled. This is the message we want to show. Now see what happens. I click on login click. Login is success. Cancel error. Why? Because cancel is not registered. If you don't register, then it cannot use the state. This is one big problem. And for this, so many solutions are there. We will see that here. What is the important note? So events configured in class. Events configured in class are subscribed to methods in class. Are subscribed to methods in class. They are subscribed to methods in class. So if methods are using state, then it is mandatory to register method and bind to class while creating instance of component class. If methods are using state, then it is mandatory to register method and bind to class while creating instance of component class. While creating instance of component class. So that is very important. Syntactically, what we do in the constructor, we need to, actually it is using a super constructor. It is using this dot state. And here we need to define this dot handle login click. Handle login click. Bind with this. That is mandatory to handle. So the constructor must register while configuring. So that is important. Now the question is, why method cannot use state? Why method cannot use state? The answer is state is configured before method is registered. State is configured before method is registered. Hence, state cannot recognize. State cannot recognize methods that are configured after creating component object. That is the reason. State is configured before method is registered. Hence, state cannot recognize methods that are configured after creating component object. After creating the component object, whatever methods are configured, state cannot recognize them. That's the reason it cannot provide access to the state. That is the problem. Now, there are so many solutions. There are so many ways to handle. So one technique is what? You are registering the method, you are configuring the method directly at the time of creating object. You can do another thing. For example, I am not registering cancel click. So what happening here? Login is working fine. Cancel is not working because cancel is not registered. So you can see cancel is not registered, so it is not working. So if it is registered, it will work. How to register this dot? handle cancel click is equal to this dot handle cancel click bind with what? This. That means we are binding with the current class memory and we are assigning to this cancel click so that cancel click can use the state. It can use the state. So now it is no problem. That means it is going to use cancel and login. Both are working fine. If I removed cancel click from here, and you see cancel is not working. So there is another technique. What is the technique is here. Instead of registering at the time of creating the component, you can use the technique here. Directly here, you can use the bind method. You can use the bind method and you can bind with this. You can directly use the bind method and you can bind with this. That means without registering, you can use a bind method, which is going to bind with the current class memory. That means you see now, I click on login, login is working, and I click cancel, cancel also works. That means without registering, we can handle it. Without registering, how this will happen now? Actually, bind is a method provided by Virtual DOM, which can penetrate into the constructor. That means it can penetrate into the memory after the object is created. That means actually, as I explained you, that many softwares will ask you to restart, but some softwares will not ask to restart. Have you seen in your mobiles these days, just install and open any app. You don't need to restart. That means now the apps have provided with some advanced features so that they can penetrate into the registry at the time of installing itself. They can penetrate into the registry at the time of installing. All apps cannot do that. Means all apps don't have that feature. Some apps have the feature in such a way that they can simply install and open. You don't need to restart. These days, restarting a device while after installing an app is not required every time because the apps have the ability to penetrate into the registry. This bind method have that speciality. What is the speciality of bind method is at the time of click, when you clicked, at the time of trigger, it can register and it can use it. At the time of trigger, it can register and it can use it. That is the speciality of bind. So when to use the second technique? Which one is best? Actually, you are not sure about an event whether it is used regularly or not. Then better you write with the bind. If you are sure that all these events will be working every time, then better you configure them in the constructor. It's just like eager and lazy. What is eager and lazy? Eager means what you are doing. You are already registering everything, but we are not sure whether they will use or not. Suppose there are 5 events. All the 5 events you are registering. When you do that, when you are sure that all those 5 events will be used. If you are not sure which event they will use, then what you do? Better you define after the constructor you bind here. What is the advantage of that? It will bind only when it is being used. Previously, what it is doing, it is binding and keeping the events ready. Even you are not using, they are binded. That means you are sure that those events will be used, then bind them in the constructor. You are not sure whether they use those events or not, then better you use the second technique. What is the second technique? It will bind only when it is used. Otherwise, it will bind even it is not in use. That is the concept of second technique. That means without binding into that location, you can configure it. So here another question is, Can we use event subscriber without registering inside constructor? Can we use event subscriber without registering inside constructor? The answer is yes. So you can bind and register a method only when event is triggered. Only when event is triggered. That is done by using this technique. Syntactically, on click is equal to this dot handle login click and bind with this. So we can use the event subscriber without registering inside constructor. We can directly bind here. So that is bind. Another important question is, can we register and use subscriber methods without bind? Can we register and use subscriber methods without bind? You can do that. Answer is yes. Without the bind method also we can manage. But without bind method, how we can manage? Because what is the purpose of bind? We said the purpose of bind is it register with the memory. That means what a constructor will do, it creates an object, allocates memory, and what bind is going to do, it can use that memory. You are binding all the events with the memory. Now what we are asking, that without bind will it work? Without bind, can it use the memory? Can we use the memory without bind? That is the concept. Actually, without bind, how to use it? For example, I will add one more button. Just I am showing all techniques. Suppose this button is continue. So on click, first we will write here handle continue click. So this dot set state, we will put a message in the message. So continue with password, something like this we are giving, or continue with some OTP, something like this we are giving. Fine. Now here on the button click, on click. So this dot handle continue click, this we are doing. And I am not using bind here, or I am not registering in the constructor. Now see, obviously login is working fine, cancel is working fine, but continue fails because it is not registered and it is not using the bind. Now in interview, the question is, without bind, can we manage? So we can do that. What we can do is here, this handle click can use a function. This function can use this dot handle click, handle continue click. That is the functionality it should manage. That means now is function. it is using a function. You see now login click, cancel click, continue click working. Now I am not using any bind method. Now without bind method, how it is working then? Without bind method, how it is working? Binding with current class memory is compulsory. Then without binding, how it is able to use the memory? Without binding, how it is able to use the memory? If you clearly observe what the syntax I written, the answer is inside it. Actually, tell me the meaning of the syntax I written. What is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of this? This is a function, and what this means, returns. The function returns this functionality. What is the meaning of return? In any computer programming language, what is the purpose of return? As I think already I explained once, generally return is not for returning value. Return is not for returning value. Already I explained. Return is not for returning value. It keeps the memory alive. Right? For example, I will show the point here. Generally, for example, we are writing a function addition and it have a comma b. And I want the result of a and b. And I want to use that result in a print function. In a print function, I want to print the result. Actually, in addition, we have a variable c is equal to a plus b. In the print function, document.write, I am using document.write addition is equal to c. Now I am calling the print function. Now here you declared a variable c which is calculating a plus b, that is calculating a plus b, and result is in c, and we are printing that result here. We are printing that result here. Now, is it possible? That is not possible. Why? Why it is not possible? You declared a variable c inside the function. Can we access the c outside the function? We cannot access c outside the function. Why? Why we cannot access outside the function? Because c is declared inside the function. You declare with var or let or const. It is inside the function only. You cannot access outside the function. Why? Why? The reason is simple. Actually, observe carefully. When you call this addition function, here what happens is it allocates memory for the function. That means it is going to allocate memory for the function. In that memory, it is having two values, a and b. Now, in the memory, it is having c, and c is having a plus b. That means this statement will execute. After the statement will execute, the result of a plus b will be stored in where? C. After doing that, it will come to this location. This curly brace that you are writing, it indicates end of memory. End of memory means the memory allocated for function is deleted. The memory allocated for the function is deleted. If the memory allocated for function is deleted, that means C is not there. And the print function is using memory. That means print function here, it is allocating memory. And you are trying to access C from here to here, which is not there. That means what is the point? The memory allocated for function is automatically destroyed after the function ends. That is the reason the value that you stored here is not accessible to another function. That means the values of one function are not accessible to another. Generally, what you can do, you can make it global. But if I make global, the global memory problem is when it becomes global. You are allocating a new memory. That memory is outside the function. That means function memory is separate and global memory is separate. I don't want like that. We can do like this. What we can do is we can simply write return A plus B. Actually, what is return statement? Return is a jump statement. Return means not returning value. It is a jump statement. That means what happens is now in this place, first memory is allocated. In this place, memory is allocated. In the memory, it is having two values. What is that? A and B. After that, it will perform A plus B. That means addition is performed. After addition is performed, that means it is going to do this work. After doing this work, return is a jump statement. Jump statement means what? It terminates. That means what return is doing, it will stop the function here and it will not allow to reach here. Because you know anything after return is not reachable to compiler now. You learned that, right? Anything that you write after return statement is not reachable to compiler. So compiler cannot reach the end. Before it reaches the end, it will stop. That means what happens is the memory allocated for function is still alive. Previously, what is happening if I don't use return, it will come here and memory is destroyed because memory ends. Now what we are doing, we are stopping before going to the end of memory. Means what? The memory you allocated for function is still alive. If memory allocated for the function is still alive, the result of A plus B will be stored inside this addition memory. Now you can access this memory from any function and use it. You can access that memory from any function and use it. So what is the meaning of return in computer programming? Not returning value. It is the process of keeping the memory alive of a function even after the function ends. That is the meaning of function return. In any software technology, the meaning of function return is this. Function return means what? It keeps the memory of the function alive even after the function ends. What is advantage now? I can access and use that memory here. So what we are doing now, here I am writing addition. Addition is expecting 40, 60 something. And you can see that it is going to return the result and it is going to show the result here. That means what is the meaning of return? Return will keep the memory alive. It will allow to use that memory. That means what return can do, it can keep the memory alive and it can use that memory. Even when the function ends, the memory is still alive. If I don't use return, generally we call it as void. If we don't use return, it is called void. What is the meaning of void? Meaning of void means don't say that it will not return value. The meaning of void is it will not return the memory. A void function will not return the memory. If void function will not return the memory allocated for function is destroyed. So the values of the function are not accessible to others. What is the meaning of return? It returns the memory of a function so that the memory of the function is alive even after function is completed. What return statement will do? It will not allow to end the function. If it is not allowing to end the function, then it is keeping the memory alive. It can store some value, we can use that value. That means that is the concept actually here we are doing. What we are doing in this situation, what we are doing, the memory allocated, you see, this is the function. This function is returning this value. It is returning that value. That means it is returning this handler. It is returning the handler. This is return. It is returning the handler. That means what it is doing is this handler, continue click is the handler. This continue click is the handler which is returned. Which is returned means it is globally used by the constructor. That means the object of this component is global. That means this function can globally use the memory. The memory allocated for object can be used by this function because the function memory is not destroyed. The function memory is alive. And this function memory is using the constructor memory. That means what? Object memory. In the object memory already state is there. In the object memory state is there. It can use the state because it is allocating the memory for the function which is available and it is used by the same state. That means for a class, memory is allocated. This function is also using the same memory. If the memory of the class is used by the memory allocated for your method, that means it is able to use the state. That means what is the meaning of this return? Return indicates that the memory will be alive and the memory will be global. It is alive and it is global. Global means it will use the memory of class. When it is using the memory of class, what will happen? It can use the memory allocated for the state also. That means without binding, we can use it. Now, there is nothing like which one is good. Why there is nothing like which one is good? So what is the problem with this last one? The problem with this last one is the memory is still alive even when the function is completed. That means you are not continuously using that memory that will use more memory. It is a burden for application because memory is still alive even after you finished using the function. Others are not like that. Others, what happens? You finished using the function, the memory allocated for the function is deleted. But when you use return will not destroy the memory allocated for function. It keeps the memory alive until the component is closed. That means you finished the functionality, you finished the event, but the memory allocated for that event is still alive. That is good when you want to use that across multiple requests. If you want to use across many requests, then this is good. But you want only once, you don't want across multiple requests, then this is not good. So there is nothing like which one is best. We use all three depending on situation. If any event is very regularly required and it has to regularly use the state, then better use the last technique. If you want it to use only when it is requested, then better to use the second technique. If you want to keep it ready and it should be available even if it is not in use, then you have to use the first technique. All three are required. Depending on situation, we use this. And if you don't do any of these three, you cannot use the state. That is compulsory. So can we register and use subscriber methods without bind? Yes. How? by keeping the memory allocated for method, by keeping the memory allocated for method alive even after the method ends, even after the method end. You can keep memory alive by returning method as a result of event, by returning method as a result of event. How to return method as a result of event? So button on click, we have to use this function. It should return handle login click. That's what you have to do. So without login click. Right. So that is the subscriber methods. How do we configure? Example I will give here. We have a admin login.jsx. In that all the techniques are used. So data binding is same, style binding is same, class binding is same. Only one new thing here is event. While working with event binding, pointing towards the methods, binding with the state is important. And for that, we have different techniques. That's only the change. All other events will work as it is. Key events, mouse events, everything work as it is. Now we have another change here is, another is forms in class component. Now, one of the main problem here is you cannot use hooks. If you cannot use hooks in class component, then you cannot use formic, you cannot use hook form. Hook form library you cannot use here. Then how? Is it possible to design a form without hooks? Is it possible to design a form without hooks? We already learned how. Obviously, you cannot use hook form. Hook form library is completely hooks. You cannot use it here. Hook form library is not suitable for designing forms in React class components. No chance. Formic, but Formic also uses use Formic hook. Without use Formic hook, can you use Formic? We have used, remembered. Without Formic, use Formic. We have used Formic. How? Without using hooks, we have used Formic. Remembered? we learnt about formic components. Formic components, what are formic components we learnt? You remembered we learnt about formic, we learnt about form, we learnt about field, we learnt about error message, am I right? And when you are using these components, there is no need of hook. Have you practiced now? There we don't need hooks. That means hooks are required in other cases. But in this case, when you are using these components, you can design a form without hooks. Already in formic form concept, I explained that. Right? We learned. So in class component, you can use only this. You cannot use formic. Hooks are not allowed in class. So there is no chance of use formic. Then you have to look for some library which is suitable for classes. Actually, formic library is enough. Hook form library is not great because it is completely hooks. You cannot use them. But formic we can do. What about yup? Can we use yup library in formic components? We used yup library also we used in formic components. While working with formic components, we used yup library now. Right? We can use yup library using the formic components. It is possible to do that. So what is the concept form in class components? You cannot use any library that requires and uses hooks. So you can use any library that provides predefined components for handling forms. Formic library provides components like formic and form. We have field, we have error messages. You can use yup for validation in formic components. So we can do that. So the formic components, how do we handle them? And I don't need to explain how to use formic. You already know how to use formic components. For example, just few points, how to handle them, how to set the validation. Already I showed you the formic hooks same. So how to manage the formic components? Let's see. Suppose this is admin login, and here I need a formic, right? We need to import a formic component. Inside the formic component, we have to design a form. Inside the form, we have to create some username, and this is input type is text, and we are having name as username. And actually you don't need this also. Instead of this, we have to use which one? Field. We have to use field. And what is the field type? Field type is what? Text. And what is the field name? So name is what? User name. That's how we can define. And if there is any error message, class text danger. To display error message, we have error message. We have error message. This error message must be having a name. What is the name? This is for username. This is how we have to define a field. And what is next? I already explained this example. Check that example what we learned earlier. Input type, this is what? Password. And here it is for what? Password. And this is for password. Password. And we generally have a button type as submit button. And this is like login something. Now how to design the formic? You know, formic needs initial values. Here what are the initial values? Is an object. It needs what? Username, and it needs what? Password. Both are string type. And it needs what? On submit. Another one is on submit. On submit, it will collect the values. Values is nothing but user details. And we will put some console.log, whatever the values. Right? If you want any validation, what you have to do? You have to write validation schema, right? Validation schema. Not comma, right? When validation schema, you have to write validation schema. Validation schema, how to write? We have to use yapna. So how to write the validation schema? Here we need to import asterisk as yup from which library? Yup library. Means all validation services are we are importing, and here we have to use yup dot what? Object. Object contains specifications. In that object, first field, what is the field? Username. Username, what is it? Yup dot what? String. Data type is string, and we put as what? Required. Username required is the message. Like this we can define. And similarly, another field is what? Password. Password is using yup dot string, that is data type, and what? Required. So here password also required. Like this validation we need to define. And that's it. We are binding, we are defining all these validation. We have a form field and everything. And that is the form we are having. I click on login, it should get that. And I'm entering some data, I'm entering some password, that is fine. And on submit login click, what will happen? It should collect the data and show. Already that is the same. So this already I explained how to use components. Here only the point, you cannot use hooks. So you have to just use only the libraries that provide built-in components without hooks. So this is an example of working with a form. I think these are not required. State, handle, login, click, all these not required now. I will clean them up. Just you need a simple form with all the elements. This is how we handle form with validation inside class components. This is an example for that. Admin login dot what? JSX. And it's not a new concept, already we learned. So same thing I'm showing you here. Because we cannot use hooks, we have to use this technique. So all your concepts are same. One more important is there here. What about controlled components? We learned function components uncontrolled and controlled. Can class also have control? Class also have control. Class is also having controlled components. But how to design controlled components using classes? Because in function components, the content is passed as properties, parameters. Can a class have parameter? Functions will allow properties as parameters. Will a class allow parameters? Yes, it allows, because class object constructor can be parameterized. Na? Am I right? Constructor can be parameterized. But here the point is you can design controlled components also by using classes. But for that, how properties are used in controlled components, we have to see. So we have another concept is how to design controlled components using class. And we have another component life cycle. We have component life cycle. These two we will see in next session. Tomorrow we'll do that. And tomorrow we can finish the class components. Then we will go into the concept of TypeScript. Now we will learn TypeScript as a language, and we will use this TypeScript to build React app. Till now we used what? JavaScript. Now while learning TypeScript, you will learn all the new hooks, new concepts. We will design another application, end-to-end application using TypeScript as language. That means we will finish our React with TypeScript. We started with JavaScript, we will finish with TypeScript. All concepts we will finish with TypeScript. And for that, first you have to learn TypeScript language. What is TypeScript, how it works, we need to learn. That we'll see in next session. Tomorrow we will do that. Okay, right.